If you don't know, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. Hall of Fame is coming around. It's WrestleMania season, and then they have a Wrestling Hall of Fame. And there's a guy, Rob Van Dam, who is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. I actually got to meet him. I don't know if I think I've told this story on the podcast, but it was like back in 2009. They were trying to come up with like they did a pilot for a TV show, kinda. It was a very rough looking pilot. But it was kind of like the extreme version of the Gong Show. So these comedians would go up, and then when they weren't doing well, these wrestlers would come up and like beat them up and throw them off the stage. And so I got invited to this. I was very new in comedy. I didn't ask enough questions. That's something you learn. I think the more you do anything, you learn to ask more questions. But the dude that was running it hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, I know you're a wrestling fan. We're doing this pilot with these wrestlers. Do you want to be a part of it?" I'm like, "Hell yes." And then they told me the concept of the show, and I was like, "Hey man, I don't want to get beat up or anything." They're like, "No, we're gonna do something where like they throw you off camera, and then we hear all this clanging like you got your ass kicked, but no one's gonna touch you." And I was like, "Okay." I show up, and then the wrestlers show up. Rob Van Dam, Sabu, Sandman was there, someone else. And these are guys I grew up watching, like as a teenager, you know. And here I am a few years later, like, these are my heroes. This is so awesome. And then they walk in, and they're like, one of the first questions, like, who's getting hit with the chair and put through the table? And then they pointed at me, like the guy who booked me. He's like, "That guy, he's up for it." And I was like, what? I was too young to say no, you know. I was like 19 or 20, maybe 21. I was pretty young, and I didn't know how to say no. So I was like, I guess. And then they didn't tell me anything. All they told me was they're like, "Hey, we're gonna run on stage during your set. This is Rob Van Dam talking. He's like, it's gonna be me and Sabu, and we're gonna toss a chair back and forth, and then I'm gonna throw it in your face, and then we're gonna lay you on the table, and then Sabu's gonna I'm gonna pick up Sabu and leg drop you through the table that you're laying on." And that was all the information. I don't even think they used that many words to tell me. I think they pretty much said, "We're going to run on stage, hit you with the chair, and put you on the table, put you to the table." And I remember having questions like, because the front row was super close, and I'm like, "You're going to throw a metal chair at my face? What if it bounces off and hits someone in the front row?" And they're like, Rob Van Dam was like, "Yeah, that could happen." And I was like, okay. That night I learned that there's not that much preparation into these like wrestling things that happen. They just kind of talk about it. But if anyone goes, "Hey, what if this happens?" they just kind of go, "Yeah, I guess that's a possibility." Yeah, someone eating fried cheese in the front row might take a metal chair to the mouth. You know, if it bounces off your skull, it could ricochet into someone's cocktail. But we don't worry about that. And by the way, these weren't special chairs. They just went to Home Depot. They went to Home Depot and bought steel chairs, like folding chairs, and then and a table. And they were just regular stuff. and they didn't give me any information, so like I'm super nervous. And then right before I go on stage, I'm very nervous, and I go up to Rob Van Dam. He's stoned. He's on another planet. His eyes are this big. And I sit down next to him, and I go, hey man, I'm about to go on. He goes, "Yeah, dude." And I'm like, "Hey, I was thinking when you throw this chair at my face, should I try to slow it down with my hand?" And he's like all high. He's like, "That's a good idea." And that was all they said to me. And then I'm like, good Lord. So now I'm on stage. And so they show up, and they start doing the chair thing, and then he just whips it into my face. And he threw it so fast that I didn't have time to put my hand up. And it hit me in the face, and there was a white flash, and then snot flew out of my nose. That's how hard he hit me with this thing. That like snot, I wasn't sick, I wasn't getting over a cold. it was like this mucus came from like my brain. I don't know where it came from. It was like deep in my face, comes flying out, and then I fall. And then I remember he grabs me and he's like, he kind of whispers, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No," you know. I don't even think I responded. I was like, "What just happened?" And then they put me on the table. And then he picks up Sabu and leg drops me in the back of Sabu's leg, hits me right in the face. Afterwards, I had a concussion. I think this was like my first like real concussion. Because I had like blood, my eyes were bloodshot afterwards. And I had a headache, and I was very irritable the rest of the night. But I found out later that's what a concussion is. I ended up just, going to my friend's house and sleeping on the couch. But I was in the green room, and Sabu, who, if you don't know Sabu, if you've ever watched The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, he's the wrestler. You know, he's older, he has scars all over his body, he's in very rough shape. His boots were like duct taped. He's had a rough go of it, and and he never talked to me all day. We were there for like 6-7 hours. He never talked to me. Then we're back in the green room, and he's laughing. And he goes, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "Whose snot was that everywhere?" And I was like, "That was mine." And then he goes, "Oh man, I knew Rob was gonna hit you that hard." And I'm like, "Yeah, hilarious, you know." And then he goes, "Well, that was fun. It was good to work with you. If you want to come back to the hotel, we're gonna be partying back there." And then he does like a quick mimic of like a cocaine snort and then pills dropping into his mouth. And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll be right there." And then of course I didn't go. It was so weird. I grew up that day. There's these moments I think in everyone's life where you grow up. And I got to meet my like childhood heroes, and I realized, they're just stoned and they do a lot of drugs and there's not a lot of preparation, which maybe makes the art of pro wrestling that much more fascinating for me. The fact that they are just these wild men out there, you know? Maybe not the generation now. Now they're a bunch of CrossFit guys, but the generation prior and all the generations before, like they were just carnies. Just carnies that love to drink and party, do drugs, and entertain a crowd with their bodies, and they didn't care if someone in the front row got a corn dog smashed into their face. But anyway, Rob Van Dam, this is the weirdest congratulations, but big fan of Rob Van Dam, love his work. He's going to the Hall of Fame of Wrestling, very much deserves it. And that was the story, I guess, when I got smashed in the face by a Hall of Famer. Hey guys, that was a clip from my podcast, This Week In Zoltan. That was episode 321, entitled Hall of Fame. That was the jingle of a bell on a cat. Anyway, if you want to check out my podcast, it's available on the podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon's got one too for some reason. Go check it out, subscribe, and do all the stuff. Thanks for watching.